we're live. Hi, kia ora. I'm Helen Brums coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're all having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1624. Yes, I did do that correctly. Okay. Be a little spontaneous. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We've had some good topics this week so far. So tonight's one is about being a little spontaneous. It's taking those moments when you've got the stuff all planned out and just suddenly deciding to do something on a whim. It could be something as simple as getting in the car and, you've got dinner planned that evening and you're getting ready to get dinner ready and all of a sudden somebody comes in, let's go out for dinner tonight. And you're like, but I got dinner here. Nope, let's go out. And you're like, okay, it's just those spur of the moment things that happen that can turn into great adventures. I love spontaneity. I really do. You never know where it's going to come from. But it's those unplanned moments. What was I going to say it's adding that spark to life without planning, without any, it's just, spontaneity can, I don't know, my head's just all over the place at the moment because I just, spontaneity. It's something that I love talking about and I just can't quite express it tonight. I'm trying to figure it out. But I love it because it adds spark to your life. It can create that creativity. It can get that creativity juices flowing and all that sort of stuff. I haven't done anything. I'm trying to think. Have I done anything spontaneous lately? No, not really. But anything that's spontaneous could be stuff like, you could go elaborate with spontaneity and suddenly just decide, you could do stuff like, you could do crazy stuff for spontaneity. It could be something as simple as, let's go down, you're down at the supermarket. This one Brad and I have done before. We're at the supermarket doing our groceries and all of a sudden I'm like, I want to go on a picnic. And Brad's like, well, I want to go on a picnic. He's like, okay, let's go on a picnic. I says, okay. And I says, well, we've got to take groceries home first. The groceries, and he's sort of like, well, he looks at the cart and he goes, well, we don't have anything frozen or refrigerated there first. We'll come back and get the groceries. And I'm like, okay. And so we've been those people that we've actually taken what was in our basket that was non-perishable and we've gone over to the deli section. And when we're living in Northern Virginia, you have Wegmans. And if you've never been to a Wegmans, this is a supermarket like no other supermarket you've ever seen. They have this huge section where there's pre-made meal. They're all healthy pre-made meals that are made fresh that day. They've got this big deli section, this big cheese section. They've got this olive bar. I don't like olives, but Brad did. They have these different, and so we've just gone through there, and we would just go through and we'll get pate and cheeses and baguettes. And that's that sort of stuff. And this is where we learned to keep cutlery in the car, because we'll get them. We'll go, we'll get the baguettes and stuff, and get some butter and just anything to make up stuff on the go. And sometimes we get pre-made sandwiches, and they'd always have this bakery where they'd have freshly baked bread. And so we'll go down and we get out, and I'm like, we have a problem. He goes, well, says we forgot to get anything to spread stuff on the thing with. And he's like, And so we'd go back inside, and they had the plasticware, and you get the plasticware that they would give you with meals and stuff. And so we just had that, and then we'd just go out and go for a picnic somewhere, and we'd go find a park and have a park bench. And we always kept a couple of blankets in the back of the car. And so we would use one of those to cover the table, and we'd go and sit and have a picnic. Half of our groceries were sitting in the car, and then when we finished our picnic, we'd go back to the grocery store and we'd get all the refrigerated and the freezer stuff, because by that, when we decided to go on a picnic, we hadn't gotten into the refrigerator and the freezer section yet. So we did it that way. But it was always fun, and you could go down to the drinks aisle, you get some canned drinks and whatnot, and you turn your supermarket shopping into, all right, let's go buy some picnic stuff and go for a picnic. And so that's what we did. And we'd be there with our grocery bags at the park and unloading our stuff onto the thing, and having to get creative with how to use utensils, because we didn't have the right utensils, like to cut bread. Whoever thought that you need to cut bread? It got to tearing pieces apart and smothering. Yeah, it was fun. You know, that was one thing that we've done. Other things that we've done have been like, what's another thing we've done? I went away for a week. Went away for a night. Yeah, went away. Decided that we weren't going to stay home that night. We're just going to go away for the night. We were between dogs at the time. It was after Bear had passed and before we got Gus. And Bear had passed on September 17th in 2004. And we got Gus on December the 4th of 2004. And oh my gosh, Bear was September 17th. Gus was September 6th and Brad was September. Yeah. And my grandmother's in there on one of those days as well. Just amazing how stuff comes back to you. And so Brad came home from work one day, and I had dinner ready, and we had dinner, and I was trying to decide what to do that evening, and we just thought, we'll just watch some TV or something. And he suddenly says, "Let's go out." I'm like, "Okay, where are we going?" He goes, "I don't know." Well, if we're going to go, where are we going to go? And he's like, "I don't know." And it happened to be, no, that was before that. That was a different one. That was a different time. We were spontaneous on something. It was coming into winter time because we were in that autumn period. And we drove. Where did we go? I went through to Baltimore for the night. There was something on in Baltimore that night, and he says, "Oh, let's go to this." And I'm like, "Oh, I can't remember what it was." Was that what? No, Phil Collins was back in the late 90s. We go through to Baltimore. He wanted to go see something in Baltimore. There was something on that evening in Baltimore, and so we went to this. I can't remember what it was. It was this thing that we went to in Baltimore, and so we went to this thing and went to go and drive home. He says, "Let's just go get a hotel for the night." And I go, "We've got no clothes with us. It doesn't matter." He said, "We'll stay at the hotel for the night. We'll get up in the morning and drive home." I'm like, "Okay." And so that's what we did. And back when I was living in New Zealand, we used to do crazy things like, you had the North Island and the South Island. There'd be an inter-island ferry that would go between the two islands. And it was a 3-hour, and this is before the faster boats came out, and it was a 3-hour crossing by the time you got through Wellington Harbour, went across the strait. Across the strait was kind of the quickest piece. The boats would slow down, the ferries would slow down going out through Wellington Harbour and then through Marlborough Sounds. And Marlborough Sounds is this gorgeous piece at the top of the South Island that's got all these little islands in there, and you see dolphins in there, and it's just absolute. I did a weekend in a yacht there was 4 of us that went on a yacht one weekend out of Picton and went and sailed, and we stayed in these different coves and stuff. We had like a 3-day weekend on Marlborough Sounds on the yacht, and that was pretty cool. But we've done something like, I feel like a burger. There was this little hole-in-the-wall place in Picton, which is where all the ferries come in at the top there, the South Island. And so we hopped on, so we go down as a walk-on onto the ferry, walk onto the ferry as a walk-on passenger, get to Picton, walk off, go to this little hole, and it literally was a hole in the wall. It was not even a shop width wide. It was like a garage door width wide. And you basically had, when they rolled up the garage door, that's what the door was for the place, there was probably about 2, maybe 3 feet that you could stand inside. And then there was the counter. And then behind the counter was all of their cooking area. And it was just this little takeout place. And they did burgers and fries and fish and chips and all this sort of stuff there. You go there and you get your takeout and go down to the waterfront, because you were like, I think it was like 2 or 3 stores up from the waterfront there, and you go and sit there and watch the waterfront. And by the time you had done that, and then you got up and went for a walk, and there was this really cool little bakery down that same street where the hole in the wall place was. So we needed dessert. So we wanted down to the little bakery down there and see whatever they had left over, because it was usually like around lunchtime or dinner time by the time you got there, depending what ferry we got on. And then by the time we'd done all of that, it was time to reboard the ferry to go back home. And so we would do it you'd had like a couple of hours between when the ferry arrived to when it was ready to leave again. And as walk-on passengers, you were like the last ones to get on, the first ones to get off and the last ones to get on. So you could actually watch them load and unload the trains, the trucks, or the vehicles, and then watch them load everything back up again. And they would do it like about things like 2 hours turnaround, I think it was 2 or 3 hours. But we had enough time to go to this hole in the wall place, get lunch or dinner, depending which time of the day, what time the ferry got in, and go and sit down on the waterfront and have that. And then occasionally we'll go up to the bakery and get something to eat. And it was just, I'd driven overnight one night. Yeah, we decided, where did we go that time? So we just those little spontaneous moments. And it's like, oh, where did we go in Virginia? There was a place in Virginia that had really good homemade ice cream. And it was either Brad or I found out about this place, and we decided to go and get ice cream. And it was like a 3-hour drive. So we put Gus in the back of the car and went for a drive. And I know it was over near the Blue Ridge because we actually did the Skyline Drive that day as well. You know, we had to go up on, it was somewhere up on Skyline Drive or on the way there. And that was the one day we actually tired Gus out. We weren't sure how to tire this dog out. You know, we had this 8-month-old puppy and we had no idea. And, you know, we'd take it for walks and we'd play and everything else. And we could not tire this dog out. And so we got in the car one day and we were gone for like 8 hours. We decided to go get ice cream in the morning. And we were gone for like 6 hours. And we left our place. We drove out, went up on Skyline Drive, found this ice cream place, and then we took these back. No, it was in one of the little small towns. We did Skyline Drive, came down, and as we were coming through the back roads, we found this little ice cream place that we had heard about. It was in one of these little towns. And so we got stopped and got our ice cream. And then got home. By the time we got home, Gus was out to it in the back of the car. Yeah, he didn't last. Yeah, we finally tired him out, and he didn't even move much the next day as well because he was standing up most of the time when we were riding in the car. But, you know, just doing spontaneous things like that, like going home and just saying, rather than cooking dinner that evening, let's go out for dinner. You know, just making those spur of the moment decisions. They're great for helping that creativity to go. You can, some of the benefits of that too is just that it's personal growth. It's unexpected happiness. Most of them can be unexpected happiness, you know, like impromptu trips, last minute decisions. You know, you might be out at the movies somewhere and you decide, we come out of the movies and maybe decide to go to dinner that evening rather than going home and having dinner at home. You know, there's all sorts of things you can. I'm trying to think the last time that we were when were we last? Oh, she's not in here. And there's been times I've said to Zeffie, I'm sort of like if we go down to Dutch Brothers, I thought, like, you know, I really feel like one of their double mocha thingies. And I'll say to Zeffie, I said, let's go up in the car and go get you a pup cup. And she's like, she'll go stand at the door like, pup cup? I'm in. Let's go. But it's breaking the routine. And the cool part about being spontaneous is that you break the routine. I remember one time years ago when I was living back in New Zealand, the guy I was dating at the time, him and a couple that were friends with him, the four of us decided one day that we weren't going to go into work the next day. So we all called into work sick the next day at our different various jobs, walked down to the caught the bus down to the ferry terminal. We hopped on the ferry, we went across, and the other guy had an aunt who lived in Nelson at one of the wineries that were down there. And so we all took the day off work. We got on the ferry, we went over across to Picton, got there, and we're like, oh, caught a bus from Picton, and we were on like the first crossing of the morning, like a 7 a.m. one or something like that. And caught the bus down to Nelson and got off the bus there. And I thought, oh, we're still got to get to the aunt's place. And so we walked, and they were like miles out of town, and it took us like an hour and a half to get there. And we got there, we had lunch. We arrived in time for lunch. We got there, had lunch, and then she ran us back all the way into Picton so that we could catch the ferry back again. And we had some time to wander around Picton, and we went and had a meal at the pub. And I'll tell you, the meal at this pub was awesome. Now this is back in the mid to late 80s, and for $5 you got the ploughman's dish. And the ploughman's dish was this oval platter, and it came out like this with food. And it had cold meat, hot chips, or fries, and like salads and all of that sort of stuff. And this roll of this, like a baguette. And you could sit there and make your own sandwiches and all that. It was just really, really good food for $5. And we're sitting there in the pub at the tables that were along the windows, and you could look out and have this great view and all of that. And we had that all finished and everything else, and walked over and caught the ferry back home again. Done lots of trips on ferries. Having a spontaneous day of, that's probably the only time I have ditched work and done anything like that. I was scared the entire time that we were out. I couldn't really enjoy myself because I was so I had never done anything like that before about ditching work for a day and going off somewhere else. I thought, what if something happens? What if they call my parent? What if they call and I'm not at home? And this kept going through my brain. And then I'm like, we're going into the South Island. Well, near the South Island, near Nelson is Blenheim, which is where the Air Force, there's an Air Force base there. I was in the Air Force at the time. So there's an Air Force base there. So, and I was like, what if I bump into somebody I know? And so all these thoughts are going through my head the entire day. And I'm like, what if there's somebody in the Air Force that I know that's on the ferry? And so I kind of like have basically tried to keep myself as quiet as possible and hiding behind everybody. And but I was on pins and needles because I'd never done anything like that. But I felt so guilty about it. But still, I didn't say anything to the boss that I'd gone AWOL for a day. Yes, that's one of my little stories from way back when. But there's all sorts of things that you can do to be spontaneous. It could be maybe there's a really good burger joint in the next town over from where you live. Where were we? It could be a really good restaurant in the next town over. It could be some fair that's going on that's close by and you hadn't planned on going to it, but you're like, let's just go. Maybe you just want to have a day at the beach. You hadn't planned it, but let's go to the beach. Okay. Just spontaneous. The thing with spontaneity is that it's not planned. It's completely off the cuff. It's, you may even be out driving around somewhere and you suddenly decide, oh, let's go do this. And there's been times when we would sit at home in Virginia and we had a movie theater like a 5-minute drive from our house. And Brad will be sitting there and we'll be go to watch something on TV. Oh, we couldn't figure out what to watch on TV. And then Brad said, let's go to the movies. I'm like, okay. Or I would say, let's go to the movies. We're like, okay, what's playing? And so we'd have a look at what's playing. There'd be like a movie starting in like 10 minutes or 5 minutes. And so then it'd be like, yeah, let's go to that. So we're mad dash around the house, get ready, jump in the car, off we go, and got to the movies. And of course, by the time we got into the theater, they were already playing the previews, which was fine. We hadn't missed the beginning of the movie and we'd always arrive in time for the beginning of the movie and just sit there and watch the movie. Just do things like that. If you're out, there was, I was working in Melbourne one time. I had 3 weeks working in Melbourne, Australia, and it was a great place. And of course, you walk out the door of the hotel I was staying in, and my hotel was a studio, like in a studio apartment. The bed, the living room, the kitchen, dining was all in one big room. It actually had a kitchen with a cooktop, and then the bathroom was a separate room. And I remember one night you'd walk out the door, and there would be like the stage doors into the Princess Theatre. And then you'd walk down the street towards Chinatown. And just before you got to Chinatown, there was this theater just immediately around the corner and one directly across the road. And the one around the corner was playing Blood Brothers. And I was in my hotel room one night and I thought, and I had to be up ready to go to work. I was getting picked up at 4:30 in the morning because we started work at 5 o'clock. Yeah. And so I had to keep that in mind and didn't want late nights and all that. And then one night I was like, why not movie? And I knew I was in walking distance of 5 different theaters. And so I walked down the street and I knew where the Pirates of Penzance was. And I thought, well, I have never seen that before. I'd seen it on TV one time years ago. I'm trying to think who was in that. But I'd seen it on TV and I thought, maybe I'll go see that. And I walk around the corner and there was this play, and there was a play on that was called a musical called Blood Brothers. And I'd never heard of it before. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like looking at the billboard going, well, who's in this? And recognized a couple of the actors from ones I'd seen on TV. And so we'll just go in and watch that. And so that was just, it wasn't planned. It was just sort of like, can I get any tickets? And I happened to get somewhere near the front. And then with my dad, when my mum and dad were over one year, it was my dad's birthday. And so Brad said, like, oh, let's do something for your dad. And I'm like what? And he goes, well, Cats is playing in town. I'm like, okay. So Brad calls up that day and says, we need tickets for tonight. And they're like, yep, okay, we've got these 4 tickets together. They're in the orchestra section. He's like, that's fine. He really didn't care where the tickets were as long as they were good view of the stage. We get to the theater and he goes and picks up the tickets at will call. They were 3rd row, center section of the center of the orchestra, 3 rows back on the aisle. And we had the best, it was the best view. We had cats walking down the aisle next to Brad, and you have cats across the front of the front of the stage there that were just 2 rows in front of us, and we were close enough that we could see the whole stage in one look, and you could see all the facial expressions and everything up close. It was awesome, and that was just we decided that day let's take Dad out tonight for dinner, and let's go see Cats and that was our spontaneous moment with my parents. It was pretty cool. But there's some spontaneity. It could be maybe there's maybe you're out walking, you're just out doing a walk or something, or you could be out doing groceries and you see something on and something, some exhibits on at the gallery, and you decide, let's go see that. You put the grocery shopping off for a little bit and you go walk through the art gallery to see what exhibit it is that they've got going on there at the time. There's lots of different ways that you can be spontaneous. It could be deciding that, let's do a movie fest this weekend. Let's watch this trilogy, and you hadn't planned it or anything. You might have had other plans, but we'll go this plan. Let's do it. Let's just stay in and do this. I had no problem when Brad would turn around and say, if we had something planned on some weekends and that didn't involve other people. If it involved other people, I was sort of like, no. But if it didn't involve other people when we were for the plans that we had, he would call up and say, I really don't feel like doing that. Let's just stay at home and do a Back to the Future trilogy or something. And we're like, okay, I'm down for that one. Or if we started doing the housework and was sort of like, I'm not really feeling the housework today, neither am I. What do we want to do? Let's go out. Didn't have to look at the housework then. But there's all sorts of ways that you can be spontaneous. It could be even in business. You could decide that, I'm trying to think of a business example. You could decide that, your team's been working really, really well. And you could just decide on the spur of the moment, come on, we're going to this restaurant here and we're all going out for lunch. And tell everybody to, if you've got meetings planned between here and here, put them off, move them, whatever you need to do, we're going out here. And it's not about being spontaneous all the time. It is having the routine that you have that allows you to be spontaneous. If there's work that you can put off because you just need that break, like if there's time I need to get out, because I spend so much time in the house because I'm, do a lot of work. I've got businesses and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of times I don't leave the house the only time I leave the house is to walk Zephy in the morning and in the evenings. And sometimes we'll go sit out back and she does her Zooms around the backyard and stuff. And sometimes it's like, I just need to get out of the house. Then let's go do something. So we've done that. What are some of your spontaneous moment things that you've said yes to? I've heard of, there's one couple that I got to meet on my morning walks, and lovely couple. Got to meet them and got to hear their story of how they met and everything else, and they spontaneously decided to get married. They'd only known each other 2 days, and they just, let's get married. So off they went. Off they went down to the courthouse to get their license and into the chambers. Judge happened to have an opening that day, and they went. The people that fly to Vegas all of a sudden, decide to get married and they get on a plane and go to Vegas. I've heard of people in New York hopping on a plane and going to Paris for dinner. Nothing planned. It's just, let's go down. People will go down to the airport or the train station or the bus station and hop on the first bus, the first train or whatever, and take a trip. You can do things like, you can do things like this. Some of them don't even have to cost you money. It could be like, well, instead of sitting at the table and eating this, let's put it in the car and go down to the park and have a picnic. Make it yours. Balance it with your routine. You've got your routine stuff, but allow room to every now and again, just like, I want to get out of the house, and rather than, but I have this to do, I have that to do, da 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 da. Screw that stuff. Let's go do this instead. Maybe you want to go to the movies. You haven't been to the movies for a while. And it's like, let's go to the movies. Go to the movies. What's on? We'll figure it out when we get there. Brad and I have done that as well. Instead of sitting at the home to see what was on, because we had to pull out the newspaper. They weren't online at that time. Pull out the newspaper, have a look, and go, this is playing. What's their show times? They've got one starting in 10 minutes. Okay, off we go. Or we've been on our way home from wherever we had been. And Brad was just like, wonder what's playing at the movies. I don't know. Well, let's go have a look. And if anything interested us and it was close to start time, we would go in and watch the movie. If it wasn't, and it's sort of like, we can come back and watch that. 9 times out of 10, we didn't go back. It was just the thought of getting out of the car and going to the movies and seeing what's playing right now, what's on right now that interests us that we can go see right now. If it was starting in 30 minutes, no, we wanted it to be starting in the next, 10 to 15 minutes. What's starting in the next 10 to 15 minutes? 30 minutes was too long to wait. And so, we'd be out like those shopping malls that have the theaters attached to them. We've been to the mall for some reason. Now, I hate walking through malls. I'm one of those people that will pull up the mall map and go, okay, where's the store I need? And what's the fastest way to get there? And sometimes Brad would say, oh, let's just go for a wander here. And I'm like, really? But there's been times that we've been in the mall. We might have gone into the mall because there was a restaurant there. And all of a sudden, actually, we did that. Red Robin. We were at Red Robin one time in the mall. And we're sitting there. We'd finished eating our burgers and getting ready to go. And they had a door that went out into the parking lot, or you had a door that went into the mall. And Brad's like, let's go this way. I said, into the mall? He goes, yes, why? I hate walking in malls. I'm like, get in, get out. What's the quickest way to get to the store? And just in and out. But no, he wanted to go for a walk. And he's like, and I'm like, why? He says, and we ended up at the frozen custard stand and got dessert. And I was like, okay, I can handle this. And then we walked out the nearest door to go to the parking area where our car was. So you're just spontaneous. Just be spontaneous. It's such a great, and it breaks up the routine. And of course, we always talk about doing staycations. If you can't get out of town, do a staycation. Just anything that gets you out of the routine and doing stuff different that can help, and it can be enough to help reset the brain and give it a break so that you come back, you're more creative, you're more productive, and that sort of thing. So be spontaneous. What's some of your spontaneous stories? I didn't really think about much of them before I sat down here tonight, so I'm sorry about all the ers and ums and trying to remember things. But spontaneity. What am I going to do this evening? I have no clue. It'll be a surprise. What am I going to do? I don't know. It'll be a surprise. That's all I can tell you. I'm going to go make a protein shake, though, because I feel like I need a protein shake. That much I do know. What am I going to do this evening? We'll see where the evening takes us. But anyway, go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening. Make room, make time for spontaneity. Don't plan it. Just if you just have an urge to go do something, go do it. If the time allows. There's been times when it's sort of like, we don't. We've got this and this on, and Brad would say, let's not do that. And I'm like, okay. There was one trip we did from San Diego up to LA one time. We just decided, let's go up to LA and see his mom. And so we did. We drove up to LA, saw his mom, turned around and drove back to San Diego that night. Just because he wanted to go see his mom. We actually also went to the Apple Pan that night too for dinner. Yes, if you've never been to the Apple Pan, and I think it's still open. But this is like old-fashioned burgers. They've been making burgers the same way for eons. The place has been open for eons. And it's just this great little burger place. And you go in and they've got it's a U-shaped counter and they've got the little stools around it. And quite often we'd go in there and they'd be like packed. And they had these, they had great apple pies in there too. And they had burgers. They had I think it was an apple chutney or something that they put on their burgers as well. And it's just a really old-fashioned place that does really good burgers and apple pie. So, that time we went up and visited his mum, it was like, what do we do for dinner? And Brad's like, let's go to the Apple Pan. I'm like, okay, I'm happy to do that. And then you find a park, find a place to park, and then you'd go in and you'd look around to see, am I going to, and they wouldn't serve anybody standing. You had to be sitting at the counter unless you're doing a takeout order. And if you're doing a takeout order, they would take your order. But if you were wanting to wait for a store to become available, then they wouldn't take your order. So it's a great place if it's still around. But anyway, I'm out of here. Make time for some spontaneity. Just adds spark to the life. Just adds an extra sparkle. So have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hey, Konara.